Hello everyone, I'm John, and welcome to the third video on how to set up a secure web server with OpenBSD 6. In the last two videos, we created a virtual machine and installed OpenBSD on it. We then set up HTTPD to serve web pages and PHP scripts over HTTPS. We also installed MariaDB as our backend database. Today, we will install WordPress on our web server, and we will do so with security in mind. So to do this, we're gonna do three steps. The first one, we'll set up the database. Second, we will configure and install WordPress. And third, we will test our new web application. So, if you're ready to move on, let's go. So we'll start by setting up the database. Pretty much every web app requires access to a database nowadays. And each requires a user account, a database, and permissions to access that database. And all we need to do this is three SQL statements. So log in into MariaDB by typing MySQL space -u space root space -p, press enter, and type in your password. And then create a database with the following statement: create space database space db underscore WordPress and semicolon. So in this case, I called our database db underscore WordPress, but you can call it anything you like. Next, we'll need a user account for our web application. So we'll use create space user, open single quote, wp underscore user, close single quote, at, open single quote, 127.0.0.1, close single quote, identified space by, open single quote, and type in some password for your user account, and then close your single quote and semicolon to end the SQL statement. So again, I've called my user wp underscore user, but feel free to call it anything you'd like. However, there's something important here. Notice how I've used at 127.0.0.1. So if you go online and look for SQL statement examples on creating users, you'll often see localhost there. However, we really want to type in 127.0.0.1 here because we want to force the database to use sockets instead of trying to resolve localhost. And the reason for that, again, is because our web server is running in a change root shell. So there's a way to use localhost instead, but for the sake of simplicity, just type in 127.0.0.1 here. Otherwise, PHP might have some issues talking with your database. So finally, we need to assign permissions to that user on that specific database. So most of the time, web applications need to be able to create and update both tables and records. So there's two ways you could do this. You could decide to just grant every privilege to that user, and once the web application is installed, you could then come back and restrict the permissions of that user. Or we can just give the user a basic set of permissions and adjust if the installation needs more. And that's what we're going to do here. So use the following SQL statement to grant permissions to our WordPress user. Grant space alter, comma, drop, comma, create, comma, select, update, delete, and insert space on tp_WordPress dot star to wp underscore user at 127.0.0.1 and close the SQL statement. And that's it. Now we have a new home for our WordPress application in MariaDB. Remember the information you have typed here because you'll need it to configure WordPress later on. So now just quit MariaDB and let's download WordPress. Now to download WordPress, we can't use pkgeadd as we did before. So we'll need to download it using FTP. If you ever used Linux before, you may be familiar with wget. However, in OpenBSD, instead of wget, we use the FTP program for the same purpose. So at the shell, type the following command: ftp space -c -s space do space, and here type the URL of the WordPress package you wish to download. So at the time of recording this video, the latest version was 4.7, but to get another version or another language of WordPress, just visit wordpress.org and locate the URL for your specific requirements. Then press enter and this will download the core WordPress application. Once you're done, we will also download the MD5 signature so we can confirm the integrity of the package we just downloaded. To do so, we will use the same logic that we used in the first video of this series. First, we will store the MD5 hash of the file into a variable, then read the valid MD5 from the file we just downloaded into a second one, and then we compare the two values to confirm the integrity. So to get the MD5 of a file in OpenBSD, just use the MD5 program, and here the -q is just to tell the program to just output the MD5 hash without any other information. And here we can see the MD5 hash of the WordPress package we've just downloaded. And now we will read the value contained in the file we've downloaded from the WordPress site and put it into the valid sum variable. Everything I type here will be put online and a link will be added in the description of this video. And now we only need to check if the value in both the file sum and valid sum variable are similar. So you can do this manually by just comparing the two values that we echoed into the screen. Or if you're untrusty of your eyes, you can use the test command to check if the values of both variables are equal. If they are, we're going to output the message file is valid. Otherwise, we're going to output another message saying that they are not similar and thus the file is invalid. And as you can see at the screen, we've passed the test. So we can move on into unzipping the archive into our web root. And this is very easy. Just type the comment that you see at the screen, and this will unarchive all the WordPress files into a WordPress directory in /var/www/htdocs. All right, so now we are ready to install WordPress. First thing we need to do is to create the configuration file, and then second, we will need to run the installer. To generate the configuration file, you can either use the WordPress installer or create the file yourself. If you use the installer, you'll need to add write permissions to the owner of the WordPress directory and remove it afterwards. If you're not comfortable with changing permissions, then do the following steps. Go to your /var/www/htdocs/WordPress directory, and then copy the w-config-simple.php to wp-config.php. So what we're doing here is just taking the simple configuration file and making it our configuration file for WordPress. Next step is to modify the properties contained within the configuration file. So open the w-config file using VI or any other text editor. And then start scrolling down to the first uncommented line, which is define TP name, which is where we're going to tell WordPress what is the name of our database, which is dp_WordPress. Then we'll move on to the second parameter, which is the username. And we define our user as wp_user, and then go on to modify the password. SOME_password. All right. Next, the host. Again, here we need to specify a IPv4 address. So 127.0.0.1. All right. Now, if you keep scrolling down to the section about unique keys and salts, here you can define all your keys and salt as needed, which I strongly recommend you do. So if you read the comment, you'll see that WordPress is nice enough to provide you with a URL, which will generate all the keys and salt for you. So to do this, we're gonna exit VI just for a moment, and then we're gonna use again FTP to call out this website, which will return all automatically generated keys and salt. So do this by typing the FTP command and specify the -o, which is used for telling where we want the response to be saved. In this case, we're going to ask it to save the response into w-salts.txt, then -s, -do, and the URL. Give it a second, and done. So let's see what this website returned us. So as you can see, it returned us all the code, the PHP code, to include in our configuration file. So we're going to append the contents of our w-salts file to our configuration file using the cat command. So just type what I'm typing at the screen. And there we go. So now all the salts and keys are at the end of our configuration file. So let's reopen it and just do some slight modifications and we'll be done. So let's make sure that everything worked. So let's scroll down at the end, and yes, our keys and salts are there. So we'll delete these lines as they are not needed anymore. And poof, gone. Now we're pretty much done with this. If you want, there's one last thing you can change, and it's the table prefix. If you intend on installing only one WordPress site, then you should probably leave this as it is and just save and leave VI. And that's it for the configuration part of WordPress. Now open a browser and navigate to your WordPress directory on your web server. You will be presented the WordPress installation page. So this is a very quick process, and all you need to do is just fill out the information you need for your blog. So type in a site title, it can be whatever you want. So in this case, we'll just call it WordPress on OpenBSD. Then you will need to select a username for your account. We'll just call ourselves admin. Then you'll need to select a password, but there's no way I'm gonna remember the password WordPress is giving me right now. So we'll just type another one. Let's see, another underscore long underscore password. And that should be good enough for the installer. Then fill in your email address. That's needed if you forget your password. The email address you will enter here will be used to the reset password procedure. And then specify if your WordPress needs to be indexed by search engine. So once you're done, it's going to redirect you to the login page. So using the password you just entered, login. And there we go. We have WordPress, at least the core WordPress application installed on our web server. But it's a bit early to declare mission accomplished. First, we're going to need to test some of the functionalities to make sure everything works as expected. And then we'll need to do some cleanup to make sure our WordPress site is secure. So let's test drive our WordPress site by creating a new post. So click on Post, Add New. Let's put in a title, and then we'll upload a picture. So select any picture available. And by doing so, we get an error message, which states, unable to create directory. That's because we forgot a very important step, setting the file permissions. Going back to OpenBSD, we will use the recommended file permissions of the WordPress developers. All you need to do is to use the following comments, which are taken from the Hardening WordPress guide, to which I will leave a link in the description. So in your shell, type find/var www htdocs WordPress dash type d dash exec change mod 755 open curly brace close curly brace backslash and semicolon. Next, we'll type find var www htdocs WordPress dash type f dash exec change mod 644 open and close curly brace backslash and semicolon. So without going into details about how permission works, the first find command gives the owner of the subdirectories in WordPress all permissions, but limits all others to read and execute only. The second find gives the owner read and write access to all files, but only read access to all other users, including the web server, as the owner for the WordPress directory is currently the root user. Next, we will limit access to the configuration file and make sure only the owner can read it, since it contains credentials to the database. So we'll use change mod 400 /var www htdocs WordPress wp config.php, and here we go, done. So that's all nice and good, but all of this will not help us with our original problem, which was uploading files to the server. All user created content is stored in the wp-content directory, including plugins, themes, and uploads. That means we need to give the web server write access to this directory. So what we'll do is we're going to give the web server ownership of the wp-content directory. And we will do so by using change own www, and I keep forgetting to use the -r to make sure that all the folders and files under the directory are also changed. So /var www htdocs WordPress wp-content. So this will make sure that every file and folder under the wp-content directory is owned by the www user, which is the web server. So now the web server can read, write, and execute under this directory. So now if we go back to our post and try again to upload our picture, it should work. And here we go, pictures uploaded. That means we can also upload plugins and change the themes as we need. That being said, there are reasons you may not want users to install plugins or modify the themes. First, most of the vulnerabilities in WordPress are caused by insecure plugins, so you may not want people to install them. As for themes, they can be a good place to hide web shells for remote access. For example, in this case, we are allowed to write to the themes directory. So if we go into the appearance and click on editor, we're going to be given access to the PHP code of the theme. So let's try this. So let's open the 4.4 template and copy paste this little PHP shell that I've created quickly, which allowed for remote OpenBSD command to be sent. And now we'll paste this into the 404 template and click Update File. As you can see, our PHP shell has been included in the 404 template for this theme. So now we'll just go and reach a 404 page. So let's go to a post that doesn't exist. So we'll just put a fake post ID, and here we go, we reach a 404 page. But to activate our web shell, we need to input a command via the CMT parameter. And when we do so, by specifying the pwd command, we get our shell activated. But as you can see, we get no result. Actually, we get the exit code 127, which is the code for command not found. The reason for that is the change root shell of OpenBSD. Thanks to that extra layer of security, even with a shell embedded in the theme, we still cannot access the underlying OS. Nevertheless, as time passes and your web server grows or changes, who knows what change of vulnerabilities could be exploited later on. So once we decided which themes we want on our WordPress site, we'll forbid the web server to make any change to them. So we'll change back the ownership of the themes directory back to the root user. So type change own -r root daemon, that's the group, var www htdocs WordPress w-content themes. Done. So that means at this point that the web server is not allowed to modify any files in the themes folder. So now if we go back and try to delete our web shell, we'll notice that we cannot. It's still there, and WordPress warns us that we need to make the file writable in order to change this file. By doing this, we prevent users or any potential attackers from injecting PHP web shells in the themes that we are using for our WordPress installation. Also note, you can change the owner of the plugins directory to prevent users from installing their own plugins. Hardening a WordPress site is a topic on its own, and this is becoming another long video, so I'll just mention the MySQL history file. Remember when you logged into MySQL and create a database along with the user and gave it permission to use the database? Well, it happens that when you do this, MySQL actually create a history file in your own folder with everything you type during your session with the database. Just go back to your home directory and list all the hidden files in it. And you will notice that there's one called .mysql_history. Now just for fun, I'll put all of its contents to the screen. And as you can see, every SQL statement that you type during the session with your MySQL database were recorded. Now there's no need to panic really. This file is readable only by the root user. Still, this file is really not needed and should be deleted. If you want to prevent further logging from the MySQL database, just redefine the MySQL_hist file environment variable to be /dev/null. So everything that's being typed during your MySQL session will be redirected to dev null. There's quite a few more things we could cover, but we'll stop here for now. One more action I will recommend is to scan your WordPress site with wp-scan. It's a free open source tool to detect information leaks or vulnerabilities. in WordPress sites. As usual, I will leave a link to this tool in the description of this video. So now you have your own private, secure web server. Now, secure doesn't mean it's unhackable. It just means that it's not trivial to hack. You are still responsible to apply regular updates to your WordPress site, especially if you have a lot of plugins. And of course, you still have to maintain it on a regular basis. And that's all for today. If you have any question or additional information, leave a comment below. Also, if you have enjoyed this video and learned something, please consider leaving a like or subscribing to my channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.